right, all right. All right, can everybody hear me? Let's see. There we go, we got lights. Beautiful. How is everybody doing tonight? Hey, Michael. If you're tuning in, you want to be a guest tonight and talk a little bit of jigging and join me here? I was trying to get a hold of Randon, but he didn't answer. Andy, not used to this cold. Yeah, right. Mike's at a basketball game. We'll have to get him on here one of these weeks. But so tonight we're going to talk a little jigging, and the Winnebago system obviously is no shortage of walleyes, but we'll try and cover. I'll kind of go through what's happening throughout the year on kind of where to start, what to look for, and what I use for baits, rods, reels. There's really a little method to the madness, and I'll try and do my best here to teach you guys what I know. Let's see here. I got a bad echo in my earbuds. I'm gonna try and get rid of it. All right. Um, so I guess let's start off. When we're out chasing walleyes in the Winnebago system, and I'm gonna try and bring up some graphics, some pictures and stuff that I have. And the biggest thing I can tell you is it doesn't matter where you go, whether you're on Lake of the Woods or northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin. It seems like those fish, and I say this, maybe I'm repeating myself, but those fish have read the books on what they're supposed to do as a walleye. They know that just before dark or just before sunrise, if you're on top of a rock pile or along the edge of a weeds, that's where a walleye's supposed to be. And on the Winnebago system, these fish have never read a book. They're the most illiterate walleyes that have ever swam on this planet. And it can be tricky because you think, all right, you're going to dissect the map, you're going to try and figure out where they don't read any of the shit I read. Yeah, exactly right. You would think that, all right, you're going to dissect the map and you find some weed edges, you find some good transitions, maybe some rock piles, and you're going to go set up there just before dark, and you're going to expect to see some fish. Nah, not on this system. I've lived on this system my entire life, and I can honestly say that in the wintertime, I have never caught a walleye off a reef or on top of a reef, ever. I mean, never ever. I don't even see them. Even when we're out like chasing burbot and stuff like that up on the reefs, you'd think you'd see a walleye or two. I've never seen a walleye on a rock pile in the wintertime. Where you do see them is in crazy places, a foot of water, foot and a half water, back in the very far back corners of bays, in thick weeds, and places that most people would never even think about going to look for a walleye. So that is kind of some of the things I'm going to talk about. And please ask questions. That's the beauty of this, having this thing live is no matter what stream you're on, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, Switch. I mean, there's like 6 or 7 different platforms. Anytime you ask a question, it all comes right onto my screen. I can answer everybody. So please, please, please ask questions, and I'll do my best to answer. You must consume copious amounts of beer. No, Ray, it's um, Tito's vodka is usually my drink of choice. So when we're out chasing these things, again, we're talking electronics, right? So electronics don't work real well in the shallow weeds. It's just there's nothing that's really going to find them. You almost have to go in and sight fish, and we find them by mistake more so than not. If we're back looking for perch or bluegills and stuff in these shallow weeded bays, and you're sight fishing. I can't tell you how many times all I do is drive around with a 6-inch pistol bit, pop some holes, drop a camera down, and just kind of search and see what's swimming around. And so many times as I'm dropping these cameras down in a foot and a half of water, just I see walleyes all the time, especially right away, first ice, early. And they can be hard to fish because obviously you're in some really thick weeds. And what I find is even, when those fish are back there, I don't really see much interest in them feeding. They might be back there cruising around looking for, bait or feeding on some small perch or such. But for the most part, I never really get them to come and look and, get any interest in my baits when there's weeds around. So when we see that, then we'll kind of slowly move out until we get off the weeds and get more into a heavier sand or like a more denser bottom. And that's typically where we'll start to see some action on those fish. Now, once you get into like 2-3 feet of water or so, the Humminbird, the Mega 360 is probably one of the greatest tools for an ice fisherman when it comes time for finding fish. The live scopes and the Mega Lives and all the forward facing, sonar, that stuff's great for, if you're going to sit down and camp out on a spot and fish, or if you're out on some small lakes and basin chasing for some crappies and whatnot. That's great for that because you can see everything in real time. But when it comes time to just searching for fish, I can drop my 360 down. It covers a 150-foot radius, so 300-foot circumference around me, and it takes like 18 seconds, and I can search an entire area. I'm going to see if I can't pull up a couple pictures here, just so you can see what these fish look like when we're dropping stuff down on the 360. And that is critical because we're able to go out, drill far less holes, and cover a ton of water in a very short time to find these fish. Now, granted, it's not going to be a guarantee that everything that shows up on the screen is going to be a walleye. You kind of have to put 2 and 2 together and kind of dissect the screens a little bit and look at the schools and see what they look like to figure out exactly what these fish might be. But that comes with experience and reading the graphs. There's so many times where we'll be up in the shallow waters seeing a whole bunch of fish on the 360, and you can almost instantly tell, nope, those are carp, or these are all perch, or there's all kinds of gar, or a bunch of different rough fish and stuff. As you use your electronics more and more, you can kind of tell, what is what on that screen. But walleyes and white bass typically, swim together. And when we're up on the upper lakes, up on Poygan and Bötehouse, really what happens is a lot of times are the sheephead, crappies, walleyes, white bass, they're all kind of mixed together in these big giant pods. And you'll see those pods of fish, but more so than not, you're going to see big schools of bait right along with those fish, and that's why the fish are there. It's nothing more than fish follow fish follow fish. You've got up in the shallows, you've got a ton of bait fish. You've got, a lot of bugs and stuff that the bait fish are feeding on, and the walleyes are going to go up there and feed. They do not use the structure. Remember that. I can't stress that enough when you're out looking on this system. Don't concentrate um, on the structure at all. Go off and find pods of bait or find areas that are holding, bigger bait clouds. And that's typically where you're going to find these fish. Now, key areas, where is that? So in the fall, the walleyes, a lot of times they'll go upriver and they'll chase the big clouds of shad and shiners and such that are up in the rivers. And when you take a look at Lake Poygan, or, Butamore, anywhere you have a tributary stream, whether it be out on Bago, Poygan or Butamore, you've got flowing water that, feeds into these lakes, all these little creeks and channels and such. And then on Poygan, you've got, like the pumpkin seed, the willow, the pine, all these different river systems, the Wolf River, that are feeding into these big bodies of water. And in the fall, all these bait fish are up there. And then as the water recedes and the water starts to drop, the current starts to go away, everything will kind of do a 180 and start heading back down into the lakes. So you got to find those, pods of fish. You've got fresh oxygen that's dumping out of the rivers, and it's typically going to be a little bit warmer water too. So water temperature does play a big key in finding fish that are eating, in my opinion. I watch it so many times, and when we're talking shallow water, the water can vary by as much as 3 or 4 degrees in that 3-4 feet of water or less. And you got to remember, and this is just stuff that's been kind of taught to me from different universities and guys that study fish more on the science side of things. They say 1 degree to a fish is like 10 degrees to a human. So if you think about that, and what water temperature should be at, underneath the ice, it should be a constant temperature. I want to say it's like 38 something. Let me see. Let's see, 39.2 degrees Fahrenheit is when water's at its greatest density. And then after that, as obviously as it calms down, no current, no wind, that liquid will start to freeze, crystallize, and get cooler. So when you find water temperature that's, that 39, 40 degrees underneath the ice, typically you're going to find fish that are going to be active. But when you get into these shallow bays, you're going to start to find water temperature that'll go down. I've seen it as low as like 36 down at 3 feet of water, underneath the ice. And at that point, when we see these walleyes, all they are doing is swimming through, just kind of coasting. Their gills really don't even open up. They're in a kind of a dormant stage, just kind of hovering around down there. I honestly, and even when I see it in bluegills too, panfish, when you find that water that gets down 37, 38 degrees, the fish really slow down. And when we find the opposite, if we find something where it's, like 40, 41 degrees, boom, man, it's like a feeding frenzy. All of a sudden you'll find a little pocket of warmer water, or you'll find, some fish that are sitting down a little bit deeper, and maybe you got a deep spring or something like that that's feeding the lake a little bit warmer water than what's there, and you run into a big school of active fish. So that's one reason why I really like, keeping my Markham, my Pursuit HD. I carry that with me all the time. Yeah, we use the video, but I really like watching the water temperature. And you'll find as you do that, you're going to see, big differences in, fish reactions and how they chase, how they feed, how they bite, where they're at in the water column too. When you get into those, temperature swings. Let's go back a couple of questions. Is Bago a clear lake or stained? Corey, so the lake is it's an algae lake, So it gets pretty green and pretty murky in the summertime, and obviously it's shallow. So when the wind blows, it gets pretty dirty. But in the wintertime, with the zebra mussels, depending on how the lake froze, if it froze when it was real windy and calmed down and the water was still stirred up, it takes a while for that to settle. And it also depends too on the year on how bad the algae bloom was. You'll find different pockets throughout the lake that'll have clearer water than others. And for the most part, once you get into the middle of winter and everything's settled down, that water can be gin clear. So it can be a night bite or an evening bite, but like I say, on most lakes, yes, you're not going to be able to catch fish out there. But Winnebago, being the crazy system that it is, when you're out over these mud flats, when these walleyes are actually out in the lake feeding, you can catch fish all day long. The one thing I don't do very well on is actually catching fish at night. It seems like once you get to that magic, hour there, that last half hour of light and a little bit into the darkness can be really good. But once it gets dark, Winnebago is kind of a dead sea. It always has been for me. I know there's guys that go out there and say, yeah, we got a great night bite. And you'll find that on any lake or, any time you're going to have a good, night or two. But for the most part, I don't really catch many walleyes on Winnebago at night at all. Poigan, totally different story. We have excellent nights, setting tip ups up out on Poigan, especially when they're, migrating late ice up the river. You'll catch a lot of times all those bigger females swimming through at night and doing really well that way. But let's see what other questions we have. How big of an auger bit do you need to use a 360? Corey, I can get away with a 6-inch for my 360. Now the Mega Live, that thing has a hard time fitting down an 8-inch hole. I don't know what they were thinking when they designed that transducer. It fits, but it's tight. It's a tight fit in an 8-inch hole. Let's see. Brad says I still like punching holes and hole hopping with the Vexilar camera. Yeah, but Brad, you got to be in an area where there's fish, man. I can go and drill, 20 holes out on Poigan or Butamore and not see a fish anywhere within, 600, 900, 1,200 feet of a hole. Doesn't mean that they're going to not come by. But I tell you what, when you can start already in pods of fish, that's usually going to increase your odds pretty quick. All right. Let's see. Just going back and read some of the comments here. All right. So, we're finding these fish in shallow water, and when it comes time to fishing them, what are we using? What kind of setups are we using? Now, out on Poigan, we're obviously going to be in some pretty shallow water. And when I say shallow, I mean we'll catch fish. I'm not kidding you. We'll catch fish in a foot of water underneath the ice or less. It's a pretty crazy deal. It's not a lot of fun because you typically you're just jigging, and all of a sudden you'll just feel the tap, set the hook, and the fish is already out of the hole. I mean, it's a crazy bite. But when it happens, your 3 fish can be on top of the ice in about 4 or 5 minutes. It doesn't take long to get a bunch, especially when you run into some bigger schools. You can you sight fish them basically. If you can get a shack over it, or I usually just stand up over the top of a hole and walk, just look down and just watch your bait. And a lot of times these fish are coming through, and they see your jig, open their mouth, grab it, and keep right on going. So when we're out jigging and we're in some shallower water, if you're a monofilament guy, you're going to be able to use a heavier rod. If you're a braid guy, you're going to want to use a little bit softer rod. And the reason being, just like I said, if you're in 3 feet of water or 2 feet of water and you're jigging and you go to set the hook, well, braid has no give. So you're literally going to just rip that hook right out of that fish's mouth. Or if you have a softer rod, that energy is going to be absorbed by your rod tip, and you'll still get a good hook set. And then when that fish, if it is a good one, wants to turn around and fight you a little bit, you'll have some energy that rod can absorb. So one of my favorite rods I use a lot of, I know Jared's pretty fond of this one as well. I the 2B Spoon Daddy. When you look at the action of this rod, you've got a very, very fast, soft tip with a great backbone on the backside. So when we're fishing these little spoons, this just happens to be a Castmaster, something bright. When you're fishing these spoons, you want to be able to jig, but not load up your rod so much. You don't want to be using a bluegill noodle rod to jig a spoon, because that fish is going to come in, and yeah, you might see it, but you're not going to feel it. And a lot of times, you feel just that little bit of a tap. So we're using a softer tip. I'm going to run fluorocarbon leader, about 16, 18 inches. Now this is when I'm shallow water fishing. 16, 18 inches with a little barrel swivel. And then I've got my 10-pound Seaguar Smackdown. For leaders, I'm typically running a 6 or 8 pound in the Seaguar Ice-X. Spinning reel, a 500 series, 1000 series, whatever your choice is there. I'm a pretty big fan of these small flugers. They work very well. The Presidents, they got a great drag on them. Instant anti-reverse is pretty important, because you don't want to be surprised and have your reel backspin on you and lose a bite. Shallow water fishing is so critical to have the right setup, because you're going to miss them if you don't. So that's kind of my primary Poigan Upper Lakes rod. This is going to be the one that we're going to be using. When we switch up and go either to some bigger baits or out on Winnebago, again, I really don't fish inside of a shanty much. I'm pretty much outside of my snowmobile or on the ATV. So a lot of times we're fishing longer rods. This one here happens to be my absolute favorite all-around walleye rod for deeper water. When I say deeper water, I'm talking probably 8-10 feet and below. This is the Evolution series. It's the new 45-inch medium extra fast that they came out with last year. You've got a nice long rod. It's maybe a little bit too heavy of an action for Poigan, but for Winnebago, fishing the bigger spoons, going up to Green Bay or De Pere, fishing the bigger fish, this rod will handle pretty much everything you want to throw at. You're still going to be able to catch those small ones. Don't worry there, but it's just maybe not as fun as something with a little bit softer tip. So here again, we're running 10 pounds braid down to a small barrel swivel and then a leader. And typically, again, is going to be a 6 or an 8 pound. Now, when we talk about baits, I would say 85 to 90% of my fish are going to come on a spoon. And for the most part, you're going to have a number 3 or number 4 hammered copper, hammered nickel, or hammered gold Swedish pimple. No bait, no live bait. And we're just going to fish these spoons natural. And that's going to be pretty much everything we use. Now, when we get out on Poigan and you get into some of these areas where if you catch 1 or 2 fish and you look and see what they're eating, if they're eating small little sheephead or little white bass, or even when we get up into the edge of these weeds, a lot of times they're eating a lot of baby bluegills is what I find a lot of times in their stomachs. And same with the perch too. The perch love eating those little 1 and 2 inch bluegills. So when we start seeing that, then I'll switch over to like a Z Viber, or even some of the Z darters if we're gonna be fishing minnow style bait. But that wider profile and that rattle from a Z Viber really kind of draws them in. And with that one single hook off the back, you can put maybe just 1 spike on it, or if they're depending on how they're eating, if guys want to put a minnow head on it. I've seen plenty of different methods with the Z Vibes as far as what they're using for bait or as an attractant on top of that. But for me, strictly spoons and baits. I don't typically put any live bait on any of my jigs for walleyes. Bob asked, do you prefer the yellow or red flapper on the Swedish pimple, or does it matter? I just happened to tie that one on because it was a brand new one in the package, but I take both the red and the yellows off, and I'll show you what I put on here. Let's see if we can find one. I got a lot of work ahead of me here, putting little spinner blades on, or spinners on these spoons. So I typically put on, I don't even know if it's like a 000, I believe, little metal, like a Colorado blade type, uh, on these pimples, and replace those red and yellow ones. I don't see one in my box. Oh no, that's not it. So to answer your question, I cut the red and yellow ones off, and I put metal ones on. If I have and we'll kind of talk about this with the color. If I have a copper pimple, I'm going to put a silver blade on. If I have a gold pimple, I'm going to put a silver blade on. If I've got silver, I'm putting a gold or a copper blade on. And yeah, exactly, Ray. So you're getting a couple different things when you put on those little tiny spoons. You're getting sound, because it's going to rattle, it's going to bang and clang against the side of the bait, and it's also going to give you that little bit of extra flash. So if when you get a fish and you're sitting and you're jigging and you're working the bait, snap real hard, snap, snap, and then you see the fish and you start kind of just slowly raising it up, that little bit of extra flash a lot of times is enough to drive those fish crazy. And again, we're not fishing, we don't have any live bait. We're fishing strictly the spoon. So I tell people, and I can't stress this enough, if you guys go to a hotel room, or you got some place where you can put a spoon in the water, and watch, you're going to become a much better fisherman. You're going to catch more fish because you're going to understand what your bait is doing under the water. So many people don't, they just tie a spoon on, or they tie a jigging wrap on, or any type of bait. They drop it down in the water and they just, well, we're just going to jig, 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 up and down, up and down. They have no idea what that bait's doing 20 feet blown. So put it in some water, snap it, watch what it does, and you'll get an understanding on, all right, these walleyes are flying up and this bait is doing this. If I kind of give it some quick hard snaps, it's going to make that spoon kind of dash, or you're going to have an understanding on how that bait is going to make that fish bite. And that's really, it's such a valuable thing to do, is just to go play around in a swimming pool, or any place that you can get some clear view of how a bait works. So I see one guy here, these pin minnows, or I don't know, the Tika Flash. This, I believe, is one of the clam baits. These little blue and silver guys, these pin minnows with that little blade on there. That's that blade I was talking about. All my pimples, as soon as I put them on, typically have those little blades. Ray says, use the toilet. You can test the bait, flush, and test the rod action and reel drag too. 3 birds, 1 stone. Yeah, and then you got to dig a big hole in your backyard, Ray, and fix all the clogged mess from all the baits that got away. Let's see. A couple of questions here. Dustin asks, what is best for finding underwater temperature? Dustin, get yourself a Markham, like a Recon. I'm sorry, not the Recon, the Pursuit HD or the Pursuit SD. One of those 2 cameras with the temperature is amazing to keep on hand. You start watching and start paying attention to some of these really small details that are so overlooked by most anglers, and it's going to help you. I'm telling you, it sounds stupid. Everybody thinks, oh, water underneath the ice, it's water, and then the ice is frozen. Here's another thing, just to kind of prove the point on how fish get. I know everybody's caught fish. You're fishing outside. You have your 5-gallon bucket full of water, right? And you throw a fish in there, and it swims around for a little bit, and then it goes belly up. And let's say you only catch 2 or 3, and you take those fish and you put them back in the hole in the water, and what happens? They go down just a little bit, and all of a sudden, and they're gone. That water in that bucket is going to be colder than 39 degrees, probably closer to 35, 34 degrees, getting ready to freeze. When that happens, it's just like you or I. It's like a hypothermia kicks in, or that shock kicks in, and we'll just die, right? Fish are they're going belly up until you warm them back up. So again, even in the hole, the water temperature varies, and that's why you always see ice freeze from the inside, towards the center. Is water that's actually up in your hole is colder than what the water is below the ice. That's why once you do like live wells, or people that put live wells in the ice too, they'll put the fish in there and all the fish will go belly up. But as soon as you push them back down underneath the ice, or drill all the way through, and those fish can get some of that fresh water, poof, they're gone. They acclimate back to their temperature and they get the heck out of there. So water temperature is a big factor in how these fish react and move around underneath the ice, for certain. All right, so we kind of talked a little bit about baits, rods, reel selection. Jigging techniques, again, is probably something that I wish I could show more. And once we get out on the ice, I'm going to redo a lot of the videos. Most of the videos I had for bait demonstrations were done when we were at the reel shot and we had the big aquarium and the camera set up. I've got a bunch of stuff, and you can go on my YouTube channel, and I'll even post some of the links here that show how the different baits flutter and how they move in the water, so you can kind of get an idea on what these baits should be doing and how you should be working them. But let's kind of get back to to jigging and the techniques and whatnot. So when you're fishing shallow water, a lot of the times those fish are going to be cruising. Oh, let me see. Do never knots affect actually say knots to your barrel? So, sorry, Laz. Yep, I did read your comment. He wanted to talk about knots. So knots to a barrel swivel. I try and keep everything as streamlined as I possibly can. And so when I'm tying my fluorocarbon to my barrel, typically using just a polymer knot on that. And then I don't know what the name of the knot is, but anytime I tie braid to an eyelet for a swivel, or swim baits or anything like that, and I'll see if I can find a link to the video. Shaw Grigsby taught me the knot down at ICAST a few years back, and it is the strongest knot for braid I've ever seen. It makes sense. It's real easy to tie. It's kind of like the reverse of a fisherman's knot or a trilene knot. But I'll post that link on here as well too. Super great knot, just all around for braid to anything. But that small barrel swivel is definitely a necessity. Otherwise, you will be replacing line multiple times throughout the year. Because when you're fishing spoons and you're snap jigging all the time, every time that bait sits there and flutters down, if you don't have a barrel swivel, you're gonna have major twists in your line. So we're out, and we're gonna talk about jigging and getting these fish to eat once we start seeing them. Obviously, again, we're not using any live bait. I like putting one of the small little snaps on there, just for the quick ease of changing colors if we need be. But when we're jigging, and I'm gonna back up here a little bit. Ugh. All right, you want to make sure that you're snapping your rod, real quick snaps. And what that's doing is, as that bait, the design of the spoon should create the bait to dart off one way or the other. So you snap it, it shoots off, but then it's going to flutter, and sometimes it may flutter back towards the hole, sometimes it'll flutter away from the hole. This is what we would call trolling, I guess, guys. We only have an 8-inch hole for most of us that are going to be up above the ice. If you're just dropping your bait down an 8-inch hole and just moving your bait up and down like this, if you got a yo-yo under the water, you're not covering any water whatsoever. You want to snap that bait, shoot it out, let it flutter, and cover as much of a radius as you can possibly cover through an 8-inch hole. And you're going to get that by snapping the baits. And again, it goes back to understanding, like when I'm snapping different spoons, I can tell you how that bait is falling down, if it's coming down at an angle or if it's fluttering. And I can tell you too, when I snap it, did it shoot off real hard to the side or did it come up and just kind of wobble? It's one of those things where when you understand what that bait's doing and you can get that feel and watching at the same time, you're definitely gonna put more fish on the ice. I just can't stress that enough. So when you're jigging these fish, we're going back, we're snapping, 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 and we'll see one on the screen. And last thing you want to do is stop. You just don't want to be jigging and also, oh, there's one, and stop. No, keep doing whatever you're doing, but just raise it up. And I do these little flicks. Just raise it up, little flicks, and all of a sudden you're going to see that fish that's going to come up, get right on you. And then at that time, remember, I've got that little silver spoon or gold spoon that's down there. I'll just jiggle it just a little bit in front of its face, and that's typically when you're going to get the bite. That's, in shallow water, you're really not raising it much. You might be dropping it down in the sand and stirring up the bottom, and these fish are just coming through and they see that, and they'll kind of take a nosedive down towards it a little bit. And if there's a big cloud around and they see just that little bit of flash, a lot of times they'll go and suck whatever's down there. They'll suck that water up, and if you don't see it and set the hook instantly, they do that suck and blow and it's gone. So that's where that sight fishing really comes in handy when you're fishing that shallow water. A lot of times, again, just jigging it on the bottom, stirring up the mud, and then we'll raise it up and just do quick little snaps. And I like to bang that jig off the bottom of the ice. You get that clinking, you get a little bit of noise, just something to kind of get that fish to be a little bit more attracted to you, to come over and swim and see what you got. When we get out into deeper water, this is where I think most people make the big mistake of fishing fish on the bottom. If you're seeing a bait or you're seeing a fish swimming near the bottom on your graph, and you drop your bait down there and you're jigging, down in that bottom foot or so, and you're not getting anything, they don't come over. You can, Kurt, hey man, we're talking ice fishing. So you're jigging that bait a foot off the bottom, maybe pounding the sand a little bit, but none of those marks really do anything. They come by, they snub you, and they swim away. So I ask this, and something I preach a lot of times to guys is, where is the eyes, or where are the eyes on a walleye? They're up here. You don't see too many walleyes swimming, scanning the bottom. Granted, they can see down there, but as in like a lot of these movies, you get that walleye vision, right? So their perception isn't real good. But what they can see is they can see up above them very well, and for a couple reasons. Especially when you got an ice cap, and you got a good bright sunny day. There's no snow on the ice. These fish can see a mile away. You've got a really white background, and then you've got, let's just say you have moderately clear water. You're going to have a spoon or bait that's going to cast a shadow, or, have that contrast up above the fish's head, and that's what they're going to be attracted to. So when you're jigging, I tell my guys, if we're in 20 feet of water, I don't want your bait going below 10 feet. If you want to just chase one or go drop your jig down and try and raise something up, be my guest. But keep your bait up high and work it up there. If a fish is going to eat, they will come off the bottom and chase your bait. I guarantee it. Just like anybody else, all these guys reading this right now or joining in, you're probably sitting on the couch someplace, you're getting ready for bed, and the mailman comes and knocks on the door. You're probably not going to go get the mail. You're down there for chilling and just relaxing. If it's super cold out and you get a negative school of fish, they're laying down on the bottom. That's where they want to be. They want to be down there. They're bottom dwellers. They're really not doing much. Does that mean that none of them are ever going to bite? No, absolutely not, guys. Those fish will, swim, and, if something catches their eye or they get a little bit of, snack bite or whatever, and they turn around and you got a minnow sitting there, not going to say that he's not going to eat it. But the fish that are up at 10 feet, 8 feet, 6 feet, those fish are looking for food. They're looking for a fight. They're looking to eat. And that's where you keep your baits. So if we're up there snapping away, 10 feet to 5 feet, and all of a sudden you don't even feel, or see the fish, you'll just be jigging your bait and kabam, a fish comes through, when you got a cone angle that comes down off your transducer at 20 feet, at 5 feet, you're only covering about a 2 foot circle, but your bait may be working, 5 or 6 foot circle. So a lot of times those fish come in so high, so aggressive, you don't get a chance to see or, really even feel it. They're just there. And that happens more times than not, especially when, I see guys or, the women, especially, if they're kind of just relaxing, they'll reel up their bait halfway up the screen, and they'll leave it hang there, or they'll be talking to their husbands or people in the shack, and they're not jigging correctly. They're just kind of moving a rod, and all of a sudden, oh honey, I got one. It happens all the time, and there's a reason for that. It's because, one, the fish that are hungry are going to be up there, and the fish that are down on the bottom and can see that are going to swim up there if they're hungry, and they're going to eat your baits. So that's why it's so important to work that upper part of the water column and jig aggressively. None of this tap, 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 or, real little, Bob, you're funny. And, they're there. So let's talk colors for that reason. So you've got to really, there's no snow on the ice and it's a sunny day. What colors are we going to use and why are we going to use it? Again, we don't want to get into it, but don't waste your money on the custom paint and stuff, guys, because the fish ain't seeing that stuff anyway. If you're going to get custom painted stuff, have it be super just bold and contrasting colors. If it's really dirty water and stained water, and you're looking for something for some brightness, just plain greens and whites and yellows, pinks, just bright bold colors, and maybe a silver or gold flash on the back, something that has contrast. And that's what we're trying to represent versus the colors, is that contrast. I'm a big fan of all natural stuff. I wish we could get Yasik in here, Ray, one of these nights, and let him explain why the Polish and all the Europeans kick our ass every time when it comes time to all these fishing tournaments all over the world. And you go in and you look at their boxes of baits, they don't have any colors. They might have some pinks or some chartreuse, but everything they're going to have is going to be nickel, gold, copper, silver, just, or blacks, just, bold colors. And depending on the situation, that's what you want to do. Is precious metals is kind of where it's at. And everybody over the years has come out with some sort of hammered gold, copper, or silver. I know I've always been a Swedish pimple guy, and when I was with Custom Jigs, I begged Bob to do the hammered copper, gold, and silver on the slender spoons. And that to this day is still one of the absolute best fishing baits that you will see on any walleye body of water. That hammered adds a little bit more like scale pattern or natural color to it, but it also throws some vibrations when you're ripping that thing through the water. It's not smooth. It's got some that hammered texture to it, and it will give some turbulence in that off the water and present it more as a dying fish. So that hammered in pretty much everything that I have, when I got a spoon on, that's what it's really going to be. And it I don't know, it works. You can ask any one of the guides on this system, and they're going to tell you the same thing. The hammered copper, gold, silver, Swedish pimple, slender spoon, cast masters, or whatever you want to call these. That's where it's at. Bright sunny days, I'm going to be using golds and coppers. With the days that are cloudy and you're looking for more of that flash, you're going to want to go to the silver, something that's a little bit naturally brighter. And coppers still work there as well too. The clutter or the copper and the black nickel can be really good on the sunny days, even when we get a really thick snow load, because of that dark color with just a little bit of reflection. I think sometimes I would say that there is such thing as being too flashy. If it's right in the fish's eyes, you got clear water and stuff's really flashing around. I think it can maybe portray as too big of a bait fish, or unless you get something that's really hungry, then something might eat it. But I like sticking to the really dark colors and not so much of a flash, and just get that contrast, that shadow that is kind of lurking underneath the ice that'll draw those fish in. So that's kind of my outlook on how to tackle it with the baits. But just remember, guys, spending the money on all these super high detailed baits is just don't go. Just try. Do me a favor, try it. Let me know what you do. Just go plain Jane silvers, coppers, golds, and I think you'll find that'll do very, very well for you. What size trebles you run on the spoons? Great question. Yeah, number 12s, number 14s on some of my smaller spoons. But I'd say most of the time 12s is what we've got on. And I typically switch mine out a lot of times with either Daiichi or I've got some uh, maybe they're the Gamakatsus. I forget. It's a really fine wire hook. No, the Suffix. Or, I'm sorry, not Suffix. VMCs. The VMC number 12s are typically what we'll put on. I was a little dry. All right. So that's, I guess, in a nutshell, kind of what we do. Locating them is still half the battle, and don't be afraid to just explore. That's some of the best times is when you can go out and just start searching in areas with no people around, and you start finding little pods, and all of a sudden, boom, you run into a giant pot of fish, and as long as you can keep it quiet, you can stay on top of those fish for quite a while. What's nice about Winnebago versus Poigan is you don't have the pressure. Granted, you get a lot of guys in certain areas, but it's definitely not Lake Poigan. It's deeper water, so the fish don't get as spooked. Doesn't mean that they don't, especially when you get on the busy times and busy weekends. A lot of people out, guy drives quarter mile away and the fish are running scared, from vehicle traffic. It happens out there too, but most of the time you can find something or get away from people that when these fish start schooling up and swimming circles, you can stay on top of them for a little bit longer than what you can out on Poigan. And don't be afraid to move. When we're fishing the upper lakes, so many times, I mean, especially when I got a group of guys out, for the most part, I don't even get a chance to fish because I'm just drilling holes. I'll have the snowmobile or just my shuttle with the 360 or the Mega Live, and I'll be watching, scanning, find the schools, and I'll go up and drill back to them. That way, these guys can keep moving around. And what'll happen more times than not is these fish will swim, we'll chase them, and they'll make a loop, and then they'll just start coming back. And then you'll have all those holes already drilled, and you can go back and just stay on top of them and bounce around. But moving around is also very, very key. You can't sit. When you get on these walleyes and you want to stay catching them, it's nothing. If you really just want to catch and release fish, Jared's been with me plenty of times. We'll get into some of these schools, and it's as fast as you can get a bait down in the water. I mean, when you got to remember, when you're only in 1.5 feet, 2 feet of water, you drop a bait down, jig, set the hook, and the fish is already up out of the hole. Take it off, throw it back down the hole, drop it down, and I mean, you can just sit there and it's like plucking ducks out of a barrel, man. It's so much fun. But again, it's shallow water. You know, how much fun can you really have fighting a fish in, you know, a foot and a half of water? It's more of the numbers game when you get into something like that. I'd much rather be out of Winnebago catching them in, you know, 18 to 20 and actually, you know, having a little bit of fun fighting them. But you know, move, use your electronics, go off, do your own thing, and you know, you'll find yourself finding more fish, and it's really changed. I think, you know, obviously with the shad being gone the last few years, it's really affected the bite and where these fish, you know, have been hiding out. But I think what's going to happen now that we're starting to see a bunch of shad come back is you might start seeing a lot of fish kind of trend back out to, you know, the flats or the deeper water, you know, mid-season. But right now, early ice, you know, with the water dropping and all those fish still up in the rivers, as that stuff comes back, that's where you want to be at the mouth of all these channels and all these streams that are dumping the bait back into the system. And you're going to find plenty of walleyes there for certain. Have you ever had a chance to use the Tika Flash yet? If so, what did you think? No, I haven't used that one. You know, I'm a pretty big Euro tackle guy. I use a lot of the Z vibes and the Z darters. You know, I've got a few jigging wraps that we use mainly because of colors. Again, you know, when it gets into that dirty water, you know, that white and green or white and chartreuse, they've got a couple just really bright colors that you know, we don't have in the Euro tackle stuff. So I think any of those profiles, you know, those small jigging minnow style baits do well. But when it gets, you know, like I say, depending on what they're eating, you know, those Z vibes, the bluegill patterns do really well on, especially on this system. Never hear much of people jigging for pike. Do you have any recommendations on that? So Logan, you know, we catch pike jigging for walleyes out on Poigan. I think that really that's all you got to do is if you run into some area where you know you got some pike swimming around, you can just jig as you would maybe go some little bit bigger spoons out on Poigan, and I think you get some fish doing that. But for the most part, you know, for the guys that are, you know, want to fight it with a rod and reel, you know, the finicky foolers and the jaw jackers and the Arctic fishermen's and stuff like that is mainly what you know, that I know, guys that want to, you know, fight them with rod and reel. That's what they're doing. Just, you know, dead sticking or putting some live bait on you know, one of those jaw jacker style devices, and that's as good as I guess any. But you know, tip ups is really, you know, the name of the game, I think, for a lot of the pike guys. You got to look at what these pike guys are doing. When you talk about going fishing for pike, typically that means no work, lots of beer, and sitting and, you know, listening for the vultures to go off. That to me, I think, is really what pike fishing is. Walleye fishing is the guy that is got a lot of gear, techie, wants to use those electronics, wants to drill a lot of holes, and you know, put his work in. And then you got your bass fishermen, and we're just not even going to go down that road. So so yeah, you know, we don't see a whole lot of pike guys jigging around here at all. But you know, if I was going to do it, I'd probably go out to Poigan and put on some of the big quarter-ounce slender spoons or some number 5 Swedish pimples and go out there and rip around out on Poigan. You know, these quarter-ounce slender spoons here do a great job. You know, they've got a really good action, a lot of flutter, and catch a lot of big pike. Oh, sharp hooks. And just make sure you got, you know, probably bump up your line a little bit. You know, I think 10-pound braid is strong enough for, you know, any type of fish you want to bring through the ice. The only difference is I'd probably go to like a 15 or 20 pound fluorocarbon leader, to whatever bait you're going to use, just because those pike obviously with their um, with their sharp teeth and whatnot, and you don't want to lose them. Let's see, what other questions do I have that I miss? Yes, Ray, hot dogs, nasty, slimy hot dogs. Laz, do colored hooks play a factor? Laz, I've played around with that, and again, I think it goes down to I don't give these fish a chance to see or really know what color the hook is, because we're constantly keeping these baits moving. If anything, I wish I could find a silver plated hook, or something flashy, that would be down there. I don't know why people don't make a flashy hook. I know they got the red hooks because it kind of disappears, but as you're making these baits move, and everybody says, "Oh, you don't want a fish to see the hook." Well, if I'm constantly shaking these hooks and bouncing and bouncing and moving, these fish don't have a chance to see it. All they're doing is seeing something that's flashing in front of their eyes, and they're going to go up and eat it. That's what we want. So I can't say that I've ever seen the colors of the hooks make a difference. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's other people that have other things to say about that, but I can't say that it's made fishing any better than not. Let's see. I think we answered most of the questions here. Yeah. um, Ice conditions. What does everybody have to report? Let us know here what you guys are seeing, where you're at, and what you're seeing. Last night got down about 10 degrees here, so, and was back up to low 30s. And I believe now for the next 10 days, I don't think we're going to be below freezing at all. It's pretty discouraging. It's going to be uh, a no fish Christmas, I think, for bluegill. We get the boat out. Ray, the boats never went away, so that's, I guess, probably what we're going to end up having to do if anybody wants to get out. I don't think we're going to be able to ice fish, and somebody wants to go put the boat in the water and go chase some walleyes in the river. I'm pretty certain we can do that. Bob asked, any opinions on the 13 fishing ice rods? Bob, I was with 13 fishing for a lot of years, and I still have, well over 113 fishing ice rods in my arsenal. Some of my favorite actions, on some of the longer bluegill rods that we did in the Widowmaker series, were super nice, and they had some good sticks too. The Widowmakers were some of my favorite before I started using the 2B and Elliott stuff. Just a little bit nicer, a little bit better actions, but they make great stuff. The tickle sticks, I always warn people, if you're rough on your equipment, kind of stay away from that because you'll end up breaking tips. But they got good stuff and people for certain. Um, uh, Okay, going back out to ice conditions around here. We're gonna go and check the bays tomorrow again and see where we can maybe possibly get out on. I did do a bunch of driving out here in Washera County, and unless you got some pretty big gonads or only weigh like 50 pounds, I definitely recommend you stay on shore. The bays were frozen, then we got that rain, and then all that wind, and then that sunshine those couple of days. It really ate the ice away. And last night, like I said, it got down to 10, but I don't think it made a whole bunch of ice. One night of that, we need like 5, 6, 7 nights of that to really build up a base here to be able to get out on. Everything did skim over though again, so that's a good sign. If we can get through the next 10 days without losing it all again, then we'll start making some ice. But I think tomorrow what I'll do is I'm going to drive around and check some more conditions, check out, go over to Poigan. I'll probably send the drone up, and we can even do a live video with the drone tomorrow once I get out there, and we'll kind of show you what the Poigan's setting up as, and look at some of the bays and whatnot. But really going to be a drive around and check conditions and do some reports and that tomorrow. Hopefully we can find something to walk out on and catch a few more bluegills. I know last week we fried up all of our bluegills and perch for dinner and made sure I had enough for seconds for the next day and the day after, and they are just as good with that catch and cook cold as they are warm. So if nobody's ever tried that yet, get out and try a bag of that catch and cook. I guarantee you guys will like that stuff. I think what I'm going to do is maybe for Christmas here, I think we'll do a promo. We'll give away some catch and cook, or we'll put a little Christmas package together and post it on the website here towards the end of this week. And hopefully somebody can win a few things. And yeah, so we'll figure something out. My guys down at Anton with Grim Outdoors is going to have Pikapalooza in February. I posted that on my website. Go and check that out. I'm going to be helping those guys out. We're going to donate a trip for that. And that's always a good time. Pretty inexpensive tournament to get into, and super cool guys. If you've never watched or done anything, Anton's that dude's a character. He'll make you smile for sure. Brian, where can you get it? Where are you located? Critters in Winneconne has some left. The Piggly Wiggly in Oshkosh and the Piggly Wiggly in Winneconne has some. If let's see, if you're out in Minnesota, boy, just about any bait shop in Minnesota's got the stuff. Menasha. So yeah, if you go out to Critters, Critters will have some for sure. Shields gets a fresh batch in pretty much weekly. They clean out, and they're getting a couple cases every week. So Shields up in Appleton, I know, has some there as well. But I know Critters has got some, and the Piggly Wiggly out in Amarillo, and the Piggly Wiggly in Oshkosh. Let's see. Other than that, I don't really know. Jared, I thought you said you were going to bed. I'll give you a holler, or I'll shoot you a note here after we're done. But that's really all I got, guys. I think we kind of covered a lot of what to look for, and electronics is one thing, and when you're out jigging, just make sure you're not leaving yourself to that bottom foot. Get your baits up out of the water, or up in that top half of the water column, and keep those baits moving. Jig aggressively, keep the live bait off, and you're gonna do much better once you start. As we call it, keep it simple. And as far as locators, when I'm fishing walleyes, I'm using either my MX7, my Markham, or an M5, my flasher. And then I very seldom use the live scope to actually fish, just because it's cumbersome if we're moving all the time. I'll set up. Typically what I'll do is I'll have my 360 be running on my snowmobile down a hole, and I can watch that screen from 50, 75 feet all the way around my snowmobile. And then I'll take the shuttle with the Mega Live, usually put that in kind of the middle of our group, and guys can go around and rotate it and see which way stuff's moving. But once we're on the school of fish, we're running flashers because they're light, they work, and there's not a whole lot to do. You just literally pick it up, drop it down, pick it up, drop it down. You're not having to readjust anything or move stuff around. Sometimes the name of the game is efficiency and being quick. So keeping the flashers around is definitely my preference. for chasing these things down. Raymond, thanks for joining, buddy. We'll have to get figure out a topic here that you can chat on, and you can talk about your veterans deal, and promote that and whatever we can do to help you out there too. But I know we can chat and talk all kinds of fun stuff one of these nights. Do you think the white bass are going to be as oh yeah, they're going to be incredible again this year. We're on an upswing. From what we've seen this fall, there were so many fish in the river, and but problem was is they didn't want to eat because they were so full. That's going to be my only concern, for the winter bite this year is how much bait is going to be out there and how much is it going to affect the bite. It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be good. These fish are growing super fast. They got really big fat bellies on them. They're really thick, good fish. A lot of the 13, 14 inches again, all those 3-4 year old males. So yeah, it's going to be a good winter. Once we get out there, I think it's going to be a lot of fun, especially for the guys that get out there early and get on these schools that we were getting on the when we were out in the boat, and probably going to be back out there this week in the boat the way it looks. Then we'll get a really good idea of as far as what's left in the river and what's still coming out into the lake. So. I appreciate it, everybody. I will sign off here tonight. Please, share this. You guys can come back, watch, and watch it 100 times over if you want after it's done. It gets saved. So, again, I appreciate everybody joining, and have a very Merry Christmas, everybody. Thanks again for all the patronization and hanging out with me on the weeknights. Greatly appreciated. And we'll see you guys out on the water, and we'll try and do some reports throughout the week here and kind of let you know what we're seeing for ice. Yeah, have a good Christmas. We'll catch you. Let's see, next week. I don't even know what the date is. December. So the 26th, yeah, a chance we might be able to do something on the 26th. Hopefully we'll have some ice to walk on, and we can do a report. But if not, we'll keep you posted. Have a good Christmas, everybody. Cheers, and catch you guys out on the water.